Okay, so here I have Windows Server 2008 running. I have the Active Directory Domain Services role installed. And I have activated Active Directory or started the Active Directory service by going through the wizard to actually start up Active Directory, creating a new domain in a new forest. And this is the result. The domain name that I chose is my last name.prv, halverson.prv. And by default, it creates a lot of these OUs, as you can see, the built-in, the computers OU, domain controllers, foreign security principles, managed. There's actually a few more in here that are hidden because we're not looking at the advanced view. And the users OU. In the users OU, we have several or a couple user accounts and groups that are created. The administrator account is the built-in account for administering the computer or the domain. Now, when this server was just a server, brand new, out of the box, freshly installed, they had a local security database, and we had the administrator user, and possibly any other users that would exist. Same thing that you would have on your Windows 7 or Windows XP computer at home. You have local login, local administrator account. When I turn this computer into a domain controller for Active Directory, its local identity is hidden or gone. And everything gets managed now on this server by the Active Directory security database. So this administrator account not only is the administrator account for the domain, but also for this computer. Okay? We'll get into that a little bit more detail in a few. Now, the other groups that exist here, like DHCP administrators, members who have administrative access to the DHCP service. So if you have a tech in your organization who is only responsible for managing and maintaining DHCP and configuring and changing DHCP, which you hardly ever do once you have it set up, but if you have that, you would have to put that user in the DHCP administrators group, and it is a security group. So if I open that up, I can see members, and nobody's a member of it because nobody's in there. But this group has been given permissions to manage the DHCP service. Does that make sense? Okay. So same thing for DHCP users. And these are members who can view only the DHCP process. So these are all built in. These are all things that are there in existence that Microsoft made the moment we added Active Directory and built this new domain. These are not things that we had to type in. You got a question?
It looked like you could actually visibly change the description.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it takes the pain out of creating your own
Yep, yep. This is just some default things that are already there. And DNS admins for domain name service, the administrators group. And then we have domain users. All domain users. Who's a member of that? Oh, look, administrator and the Kerberos agent. This Kerberos user account is used to issue Kerberos tickets. Kerberos is or what's the official? Cerberus, I guess. I say K with a Kerberos. Cerberus, the Egyptian three-headed dog. That is Cerberus is the method of providing a ticket. It's kind of like a wristband to a amusement park or a fair. With the wristband, from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m., I can ride all the rides except the one where I can climb up the wall. Right? So that's exactly what Kerberos is doing, is issuing you a ticket, And you can access all of these resources except these. So it is a ticket that you present as you go up and go, look, I got a badge. Or look, I got a wristband. I can do this ride. And they allow you to use the ride, use that resource. Okay? But it expires at 5 p.m. You go to try to show your wristband, and they go, sorry, it's after 5. You can no longer use that wristband. You're going to have to go get a new ticket to ride this ride.
Are you talking a SID, or is this something different than a SID?
This is something different than a SID.
Okay.
This is the protocol used to issue tickets or issue permissions to resources on our network.
Temporary permission.
And it's all temporary. It all expires. This ticket expires after a certain period of time. So the moment you type a username and password to log on to Active Directory, you're issued a ticket. And you can use that ticket on any resource that you've been given access to, any printer, any other workstation, any other server. You can use it. The moment you try to use this printer, the printer's going to go, let me see your wristband. And you're going to have to show your wristband, and it's going to go, yeah, that wristband is no longer good here. You have to go get more credentials or a different ticket to access this, which you don't have because you were only given this one ticket. But Sally, she was given a different wristband than you. Her wristband is purple, and purple wristbands can access the printer in financial aid. Your blue wristband won't work.
Does that have anything to do with the session? You get a new one every time you open it?
You get a new one every time you authenticate to Active Directory. Yep, and that establishes a session, a time frame where that ticket is active. Okay? All right, so that's just the Kerberos agent. Guest users, there's only one member, the guest account. And, thank goodness, after a few versions of Windows Server, by default, the guest account is, as you can see with that little down arrow, I'll take a look at the properties. Disabled. So the guest account by default is disabled. It hasn't been in the past.
Major security quiz.
So like when you invite someone into your house, they know they should just stay out of your bedroom, right? And stay out of your pantry doors, right? But once they're in your house, the only way to stop them is to physically follow them around and make sure they don't go in there, right? But who's to say they're not just going to go snooping around? We hope they're not, right? That's the same thing with the guest access. The moment you give a user guest access onto your domain, they're now in your domain. Although they don't have a wristband to ride those certain rides or print those printers, they still are close enough that if they want to, they can take advantage of the system. So that's where a guest account is disabled by default unless you want to enable it, and then you can set it to expire after a certain period of time. So use the guest account wisely. I'm going to cancel on this, not going to make any changes. Okay, so there's a lot of other groups that are built in. I can also go to the built-in OU, and I see other security groups. Try to expand this a little bit so we can see some of them. We have the administrators. Administrators have complete and unrestricted access to the computer or the domain. Who's a member of the administrators? The domain admins group, the administrator, and the enterprise admins. Enterprise admins are at the forest level. If you're an enterprise admin, you can see other domains. Possibly change them depending upon the security that they want to provide, they want to identify there. That's the difference between enterprise and domain. So the administrators is a domain local group. Backup operators. Nobody is a member of backup operators, but backup operators can override security restrictions for the sole purpose of reading or backing up files on your system. So there, you could create a folder and give permissions to that folder only to user Bob. Even you as the administrator now cannot go into Bob's folder and see what's in there. But if I were in the backup operators group, I would be able to see inside of Bob's folder just to read, so I could back up those files and the attributes of those files. So we have other ones: print operators, manage print queues, server operators, can administer domain servers.
Under the guest one, it has two different guests. It has domain guest and regular guest.
The domain guest is if you look at the picture, it's a group. And then the user guest is in there as well. You see, you look at the little icon. If we go to users, we can see members. Authenticated users, which is an NT Authority built-in account. Interactive, and then domain users. So if I go take a look at users, notice that the domain users group is a global group. The user is organized in global groups. The global groups get put into the domain local group. I'll explain that here in a bit, okay? So we can see the type of group. It's a domain local group. So we have accounts go into global groups. Global groups go into local groups. And then we assign permissions to local groups. All right, so back to this organization of our domain. Halverson.prv, a very, very important aspect of Active Directory is the naming. We have to be able to resolve the name of the domain and any attribute within that domain. And we do that by using what service? DNS, a very important aspect of Active Directory. When I installed Active Directory on here, the halverson.prv domain did not exist in DNS. So I had it create it and add all the records to it. So if I go to DNS, I can see forward lookup zones, and here's my halverson.prv. Here's my server 10. My name of my server is server 10. And you can see that it has a IP address of 172.16.0.10. So server 10.halverson.prv resolves to 172.16.0.10. Workstation 001.halverson.prv resolves to 172.16.0.154. If I go to a command prompt, type ipconfig/all, I am using myself to resolve names. So if I ping server 10.halverson.prv, I get my IP version 6 address in response. If I type nslookup, which is the name server lookup, and I type in server 10.halverson.prv, I get the 172.16.0.10. If I type in wks001.halverson.prv, I get the IP address for my workstation. It's very important that DNS is functioning properly and that any device, any printer, any workstation that is going to use Active Directory and all the resources that Active Directory has that they use this DNS server right here that holds all of this information. So if I configure your workstation, Dale, to be part of my halverson.prv domain, I have to configure the DNS server that you use to resolve names. I have to point it to this DNS server right here, to the IP address of this server. And we'll get into DNS a little bit more detail later on when we talk about network services. But just know that you have to be able to resolve the domain name, and the best way to do that and test to make sure that you're using the right thing is to ping the domain name. When I ping the domain name, what do I get for a response? The IP address of the server that what? Holds the halverson.prv domain. And I can see that if I click on the halverson.prv, same as parent. What's the parent? Halverson.prv resolves to the IP address of the server that is responsible for the halverson.prv Active Directory. Question?
I forgot what you pinged earlier to give the IPv6 address.
I pinged the actual server name.
Okay.
Server 10.
Okay.
And it gave my IP version 6 address. Yep. Notice this. I just pinged the name server 10. I didn't put the fully qualified domain name on there. I just put that name in there. And that's because it automatically appends the domain name because of my DHCP or my IP settings. ipconfig/all right here. If I just type a name, it'll automatically append halverson.prv, the DNS search list.
Suffix. So ND for
Yep. Okay, so if I just type in WKS001, it automatically append halverson.org. If I type ping Bob, it'll try to ping bob.halverson.prv, and Bob doesn't exist, so it's going to give me an error. Does that make sense? Okay. So if I'm going to have a workstation use the domain, I need to make sure it can ping the domain or resolve the IP address of where this domain is actually physically residing. Who's responsible for it? So that's DNS. Very important to make sure DNS is functioning. Okay, so halverson.prv. I am going to create a department called Human Resources. But I'm going to organize these OUs based on my Fenimore, Lancaster, Prairie du Chien structure. So I have 3 locations, and each location is going to have its own OU, organizational unit. It's just a way to organize my units of my business. So I'm going to create a new organization unit. I'm going to call this Fen for Fenimore. I'm going to create a new organization unit called Lan for Lancaster. And a new OU for Prairie du Chien. So here I have my 3 different locations. So in the Fenimore, we are going to have a Human Resources Department. And I have 2 people in my Human Resources Department. So I'm going to right-click on that OU and select New Group. Oh, what type of group do I need to create? To organize users, I create a global group. Because users are floating around on this globe, they float around all over the place, right? But if these users that are floating around inside my SWTC domain need to access a resource over an MATC, they need to be part of the universe or forest, right? So you have that visual? So a universal group, imagine it like this. You're inside of your own little domain, but if you need to go outside of your domain and use a resource, you need to be a member of a universal group. Only universal groups can go between domains. And we'll get into this when we start assigning permissions. Don't worry, right now we're just trying to organize our users. A domain local group is a group that is tied to a specific server.
Just that server itself, right?
Just that server itself. So this is a file server. And it has a folder, folder A. I'm going to create a local group called A folder. Well, who has access to the A folder? The special projects group has access to the A folder. So I'm going to put the special projects group inside of this A folder group. We'll make this three-headed monster group. Look. Okay. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
So my user is Bob. Bob is in my special projects group. This is a global to my globe here group, just to keep all my special projects people organized. And I'm going to give this global group, I'm going to add it to the local group over here on this file server so they can access this folder A for storing their A project files.
So global groups have access within the domain, but not necessarily the whole forest.
Correct. Only universal groups have access outside. So this is a global group for human resources. I'm going to call it HR. And group type, security or distribution. They're always going to be security groups. The only time you use distribution group is if you have an email server within Active Directory. This is primarily for email. Distribution is for email. So we're not going to create a distribution group. So we hit OK for global group, HR. Okay, and then I have users. Well, I can further organize my users into a users OU. Oh, look at this. I can create an OU inside of another OU. And I can create a new user. And Leroy Vasson. And username or login name, some companies use first initial, last name. This is the best naming scheme because there could be a Lacey Vasson, right? There could be a Larry Vasson in this organization. This is a fairly unique name, so I highly doubt it, but it is possible. So it's important to use both the first and last name and separate it with a period. Okay? So when they log on the computer, they're going to type in Leroy.Vasson, and they'll be able to log in. Yes, question?
What if there's two people with the exact same name?
Then you're going to have to get creative and do something like Leroy A. Vasson. So Leroy A. Vasson. Or Leroy Vasson A. I don't know. When you get to that point, it's going to be fairly unique enough that you're going to have to make a unique decision.
Not case sensitive.
It's not case sensitive. No, it's not case sensitive. Okay, so as you can see down here, the user login name for pre-Windows 2000 computers will be this. In the Halverson domain, even though my domain name is halverson.prv, the NetBIOS name is going to use is just Halverson. Here I set my password. And user must change password next login. Typically you want to get this set. So now I tell them the password is password.1, and they're going to log in. It's going to prompt them to change the password. For the sake of this lab, I'm not going to do that. Hit next. And finish. So now Leroy exists as a user, but is Leroy a member of the HR group? No. So I can do one or two things. I can modify the group or I can modify the user. Let's modify the user. Double click on the user. Wow, look at all these tabs. So I want to make Leroy a member of, oh look, member of tab. By default, he becomes a member of the domain users group.
We can still add HR.
And now we can add, I can type in HR and hit check name, and it resolves. So HR does exist. Hit OK. And now Leroy is a member of the HR group. Let's take a look. HR group, members, Leroy, yes, is in there. So now I can create another user. Let's do this by accident. Let's create another new user. And let's create a user, Terry. Yeah, I was getting creative with some names. So what I did is I just copied this. And then down here I just pasted it. And then it makes it a lot easier. I don't have to type the whole name over again. Put a little dot in between there.
You have to be specific with that is me, right? Like it absolutely has to have capital letters.
No, caps don't matter.
You're putting a user inside the.
Oh no, I put the user in the wrong OU. Oh shucks. What can I do? Terry is supposed to go in here, or I can right click, right? This is Windows, I can right click anything.
Dragon?
Move.
Move, look at that. Move where? Oh, look at all the places I can put them.
Dragon.
I can drag it if I want to.
Yeah.
And it says, warning, if you do this, there will be certain things that will change for this user. The security and the policies that you have set are going to change for this user. Are you sure you want to move this, and do you understand the effects of what you're doing? Yes, I do. So now I'm going to users, and oh look, there's Terry. Terry, are you a member of HR? No, Terry is not. So let's add Terry to the HR. Hit OK. So now if I go take a look at my HR group, I have 2 people inside my HR group. And now I'm organized. So now let's create another OU just for the sake of seeing how we can use organizational units. And we'll call these computers. I have a workstation up here that was created by default. And it was put into the computers OU, which is a default built-in OU. I can drag that computers OU down to the computers because workstation 001 is actually located in Fenimore. So I'm going to manage the Fenimore group policy settings, group policies for that computer. And there it is. Now it's inside of the computers OU inside of the Fenimore. So again, OUs are primarily meant for your organizational purposes, you as an administrator. Nobody knows that they're in these OUs. So you could theoretically create an OU called Dumb People and put Sally in that group and put Bob in that group, or that OU. Okay, don't do that. That's not smart. But they don't know that they're in there. What's up?
When you're showing it simplified like this, creating new users is probably a really cool way to do it. In real world, you're probably not going to do that because they could be such a complicated set of groups that they belong to, depending on the size of the organization, functionality, stuff like that. So more common would be to copy an existing user that is doing the same job or whatever.
Here we go.
Do
Yep.
a rename wizard.
You're spot on. Thank you for bringing that up. So let's say HR says, oh my gosh, we have so many employees, it's hard to manage all of you people. We need another HR person, another human resources person. And they go, and we just hired, who did we hire? No. Terry and Leroy are already there. Susie. So we're going to right click on Terry and say Susie is going to use and be approximately the same function or role within our organization as Terry. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to select copy. And Susie Smith. And notice that I did not have to uncheck user must change password next login because I had already unchecked it with Terry's account. Now let's take a look. Susie, oh, is a member of HR. That is so much easier. Okay, so with this, I think you guys have plenty of ammunition. You can accomplish the lab.
Okay, I got a question.
And we have another question. Yes?
The workstation you had up there, that's these workstations we're putting in.
No, this workstation
Wow.
I added when my workstation was added with WDS long ago.
Okay, but when we put these workstations in as part of the domain, that's where they're gonna go?
Okay, we'll answer this question. I'll do this. I'll humor you and we'll go through this real quick. This is a good question. So this
Thank you.
server